So, welcome to Pints and Passerines, the evening kind of bird discussion that's hosted by Indiana Audubon. And this week we have a special presentation on barn owls by from Amy Kearns from the Indiana DNR. And we are currently, like I said, we're on Zoom and it's going to be recorded. So if you miss anything or want to go back, it'll be available on our YouTube channel within a few days. If you're joining us on Facebook Live, feel free to make comments and we'll get to them as soon as possible, but just know that there can be up to a 20-second delay on that Facebook Live. But otherwise, feel free to interact. If you are on Zoom, please keep yourself muted. If you have questions, maybe just put them in the chat and we'll go through them at the end for Amy, just because we have so many people joining us today. She does have some interactive polls and trivias. It wouldn't be Pints and Passerines without it. So yeah, from there, I'm going to turn it over to Amy. Amy, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this. It's like we have a lot of people interested in barn owls, and I, of course, am very happy and excited to talk about them. So I'm going to try to share my screen to share my slideshow. There we go. Hopefully that looks good to everybody. There's my contact information down at the bottom, and I'll share that again at the end of the talk. And like Sam said, I'm going to hang around until after the talk. So if you have any questions and you want to save them to the end, or if you go ahead and put them in the chat, I'm going to hang around. I would stay late and make sure that all those questions get answered. So don't be shy if you have a question, and hopefully we can talk about it later. I would start off with just introducing and explaining a little bit about our program. So I am an employee of the state of Indiana, so that means I work for you. I work for the Department of Natural Resources, the Division of Fish and Wildlife. And that's in the Office of Science and Research, the Wildlife Science Unit, the Non-Game and Endangered Wildlife Program. So that's actually a tiny little program, and it gets the funding to do this work with endangered species through donations to the Non-Game Wildlife Fund. Our focus is on conserving endangered species. So I put 3 pictures of endangered species that I work with, and I didn't make a poll for this one, but I just wanted everybody to see and just challenge yourself to see if you can identify all 3 of these birds that nest in Indiana and are state endangered. And I'm sure a lot of you know the first one on the left is a Loggerhead Shrike, one that is very near and dear to me. The one in the middle is a least tern. It's the smallest tern in North America. And this picture was taken on the Goose Pond Fish and Wildlife Area's nesting island for them. And then the bird on the right is a barn owl, of course. So our program really focuses on endangered species and special concern species. And those, we call all of those our species of greatest conservation need. And we have about 50 listed bird species. And our basic goal is to help those listed species, which we do in many different ways. And all of our work, we don't get state tax dollars for it. We depend on donations, and it's tax season. So if you have done your taxes, or maybe you haven't done them yet, but if you're doing it online toward the end, there's this thing called the state income tax checkoff. And back in the day, we used to have a little picture of an eagle head there, and it was really recognizable, and we were the only tax checkoff in town, and so we used to get a lot of donations that way, but now we have some competing checkoff funds. And we have really lost so many donations because we lost the picture of the eagle head and we have the competing funds. So now I just need to remind everybody we're still there. You just have to look a little harder. It's the Schedule 5 form, and you write in the code next to it, code 200, and you can donate all or part of your state income tax refund. So that's a really, really easy way to support our work with endangered species. There are other ways, you can send in a check or even donate with a credit card online, but the checkoff is really the traditional way. So there's more information on our website about donating to the Non-Game Wildlife Fund. This is a picture of what our website looks like right now. There's lots of information on here, including there's a link to a live camera that looks inside of a barn owl nest box, and I think that's really awesome. They should be laying eggs, I think, anytime. I was watching the camera yesterday, and I think the female owl is really looking broody in there. So check it out. If you've never checked it out, it's right on our website, endangeredwildlife.in.gov. And you can also see and read more about our other really great work. We work with a variety of endangered species, including everything from various endangered mussel species to rattlesnakes to Allegheny wood rats and Indiana bats. There's just a whole wide variety of things, and you can learn more about that on our website. So this program tonight, I want to start off just talking about the status of barn owls in Indiana and how to identify them, because that just seems like a really good place to start. And then I want to tell you about our barn owl nest box program. So barn owls are widely distributed. They're found all over the world, every continent except Antarctica. And Indiana, we're really at the northern edge of their range in North America. So this slide has a lot of small letters, don't worry about it. This just shows the results of 2 breeding bird atlases that we've had in the past. So Breeding Bird Atlas is an effort by a state to survey for all the breeding birds every 20 years. And so our next atlas will begin in 2025, and we might just be asking you to volunteer. It's a tremendous effort to try to cover the entire state and learn more about the birds that breed here. And you can see that these 2 maps showing the distribution of barn owls, the frequency is relatively similar, but where you see these little dots, which indicate where the owls were, there's some pretty big differences. So if you look in like the southeastern part of the state, in the left, the one that's on the left, that's from 1985. There's a lot of dots in Switzerland and Ohio County. And if you look at the more recent atlas, the one from 2005, which is on the right side of the screen, you can see that those places have pretty much vanished. And I want to draw your attention to that, and also Greene County, which I don't know that you can't see my mouse, can you? Because Greene County is this big rectangle here.
We can see your mouse, Amy.
Oh, cool. So Greene County here, you notice there was a big increase. In the old atlas, there weren't any spots with confirmed nesting there. So that's another interesting thing when I show you our more recent results. So in addition to the atlas, when we survey for barn owls, we do that more frequently than the atlas, typically every 5 years. And looking back at the data that we have, I look for years when we have a complete data set across the entire state. So you can see that graph. It shows you just the years that we have statewide records for nesting. And you can see, like in 1995, there were only 11 barn owl nests in the entire state. In more recent years, we found between 15 and 20 barn owl nests each year in the entire state. So you can see that's pretty rare. Our more our most recent survey that we covered the whole state looking for nesting barn owls was 2017. And we found 43 nests in the state. So that's more than double what we typically find. And of course, there's nests that we don't know about. So this was really quite the jump, and it's pretty awesome news that the owls seem to be doing better than they have been in recent years. And I, of course, think partially that is due to our nest box program, but it's also probably a lot of other things going on, like farming practices and mild winters that we've had recently. So digging a little bit more into our 2017 results, I just want to show a map that shows you where we found nesting owls. The bigger circle is more owls. So we had these 43 nests in the whole state. Most of them were in nest boxes. And you can see there's a real big shift over to the western states, or the western counties, and we lost those counties down in the southeastern part of the state that I was trying to show earlier. So we didn't have any nesting over in those Switzerland and Ohio. We did find some owls roosting in there, but we didn't have any nest sites. And that's, you know, a lot of different things going on, but there's a lot of development going on in that part of the state and just land use changes. So it'll be interesting on our next survey to see if that trend continues. Oh, I also wanted to point out that this tally of nest sites is just per site per year. So some of these sites actually had more than one nest attempt that year. Barn owls can nest at any time of the year. Most of it happens in the spring, but some birds will nest twice a year. They'll have 2 broods. And when we did this survey in 2017, we actually found 6 nests that had nestlings in December. And I think those were all likely second broods or double broods for that year. So pretty amazing, really, to have so many late nests or second nests. Okay, so taking a step back from the survey results and just to talk about the basics of barn owl identification. So in Indiana, we have 4 resident or year-round species of owls. We have great horned owls, barred owls, barn owl, and eastern screech owl. And 3 of these species are common, and 1 of them is endangered. And so I thought we would do a poll, but I don't. When I'm doing my oh, there it is at the top. We're going to try a poll. The first one. I want to know which one of these owls is a grassland habitat specialist. Oh, I have to launch it. Launch the poll. There we go. There. So it looks like there's 30 people on. Oh, we see as people weigh in. That's cool.
Yes, Zoom polls is awesome.
Yeah. We're going to play around some more with polls. So this is just the first question. Okay, cool. Yeah, so feel free to chime in on polls. This is just for fun. Nobody's keeping track of the score, and we can't see what you picked. So, this is just for fun. Oh, I can see. Can you guys see too? Or is it just me?
They cannot see until you end it, and then you'll share the results, and they'll see.
Okay, cool. All right, I ended it, and now I'll share the results. So you should see it now. That most people got it right. It's barn owl. Good job. So of those 4 species that are resident, barn owls are the only one that is a grassland specialist. And that is a big reason why they are endangered, because our grasslands are endangered. That's a habitat that is not doing great in the state. There's a lot of habitat loss. So get back to my PowerPoint, talk more about the barn owl ID. And that habitat is really helpful for identifying your owl. So a lot of the time it's really confusing because barnals make not just barnals, but all owls make a wide variety of vocalizations. So a lot of the time there will be like a begging great horned owl or another begging species of owl, and it's a kind of a screechy type of begging call, and people will hear that and think it's a barn owl. It's really, really common that people think they hear a barn owl, but the thing is that if you hear that call and it's coming from the woods, it's really unlikely to be a barn owl because our grasslands our barn owls are usually in grassland habitats. Barn owls never hoot. You know, their calls are like just like a screeching, kind of a spooky call, and I think it's pretty well known. But I'll play it here on my phone and test that out and see if you all know this screeching call of a barn owl. Can you hear it? So it's kind of a scary call. And the other owls, they can make screeches that sound a lot like that. So I want to do a quiz, just for fun, not 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 a grade or anything like that. And it's a really hard quiz, so I'm warning you ahead of time. It's going to be a tough one. Relaunching the poll will clear the previous results. I guess that's okay. So how do I get to the next question, Sam?
First question in progress and poll. Oh, at the top, there's a little arrow. It's the poll one first question, then you can go to the other ones.
Got it. Okay. So we're gonna do this one quiz, and it's just going to be playing some owl calls that are hard. and then we're going to see how many people identify which one is the barn owl. And I'm not saying it's only one. So we're going to have 4 questions. Here we go with the first one. What type of owl is that? Does anybody know? This is just for fun. Don't be afraid to guess. Nobody has guessed. I can see that nobody's answered. So I don't know. I thought we would have a fun poll, but I don't know.
Oh, I see. The group poll is 5 they have to do all the answers before they submit. So you have to do all 2 through 5.
So they are answering. I just can't see it.
And then they submit it, I think.
Okay, cool. All right, excellent. I was worried. I was like, oh my gosh.
I was too.
Nobody wants to do the quiz. All right, cool. Well, good. So that was 1. Now we have question 2, and I'll tell you at the end. It will all be revealed. So here is number 2. What type of owl is this? Cool. Remember, this is just for fun. It's hard and for fun. So here's number 3. Okay, and one more after that. This is a fun one. This is number 4.
Okay, now the results are coming in. Good, good.
I love it. It's so fun.
We have some people guessing on the Facebook Live too, so I'll have to make sure to type in the comments what the answers are so they don't miss it.
Very cool. All right, awesome work, you all. I'm so impressed. We had a lot of people know the answers, which is very cool. So I'll end the polling and then share the results and you all can see. So the first one was this one. And that is a barn owl. So that's the begging barn owl call. And that's the sound we can hear at our nest boxes at night when the young are begging for food. And it's this raspy, repetitive call, usually all that one tone. You can hear it just very repetitive and no variation in the pitch. So number 2, looks like 25% of people got that right. That's good. So this one I think is really, really commonly mistaken for a barn owl because this species, a great horned owl. Wait a second. Oh, so it shows orange is the most number. Okay, so the answer for number 2 is actually great horned owl. And this is what that sounded like. So, you know, that's a lot easier to judge the quality in person, but a great horned owl begging call, which that is it's like got more of like a honking, like a really loud honking quality, at least to my ear. It's really loud and it's repetitive, but it's just sounds like a big bird, you know, because this is a really huge owl. And you can kind of hear that in the call. And this is a species that it's very common to hear this call, especially like in the summer and the fall, from woodlots all over the state. So the third one is actually a barred owl. And that was this call here. And you can tell a barred owl begging from a great horned and a barn owl because when a barred owl begs, it goes up at the end, almost like a question. So, and that's really consistent that these barred owls, it's almost like a question at the end going up at the end. Here's what it sounds like again. Like, hopefully you can hear how it goes up at the end, like, you know, I don't make a good impression, but hopefully you know what I mean. And then the last one was a barn owl. This is the alarm call of a barn owl. And I just think it's so funny. This one sounds goofy to me. So my whole point of the quiz was to have fun. I like quizzes. I hope you do too. But also because I think it's really hard to identify owls based on their call sometimes. I mean, we have our hoot owls and things, and sometimes it's really straightforward and easy, but other times it's really challenging. And I just wanted to remind everybody that it can be really hard to tell barn owls from other more common species, but you can use habitat as a clue. And if you hear it coming from the woods, probably not a barn owl. So more about barn owl ID. They're a medium-sized owl. They're the same size as our long-eared and short-eared owls. They are the only Indiana owl that has a spotted breast. And so if you are lucky enough to see them up close, you might be able to appreciate that feature. They have a heart-shaped face and black eyes. I actually think it's challenging if you see an owl in the headlights, it can look totally washed out and white. And so, you know, I've seen a barred owl in my headlights before, and it just looked so much like a barn owl because it was just totally washed out in white, but then I had a better look and it was a barred owl. So just a warning about looking at an owl in the headlights can look white. They're actually pretty small owls. So you see, this is me holding a male. They have a 3.5-foot wingspan. And so that might just help put it into context to see that one being held, that they're actually pretty small. Even though they can look really big when they fly out of a barn over your head at night, it can be kind of shocking. But they're a pretty small owl. Great horned owls, they have horizontal barring on the breast and yellow eyes. When they fly, their ear tufts can be down, so you might not see the ear tufts. And they have pointy wings. So that overall shape of the wings can be helpful for identifying an owl, especially if it's silhouetted. Great horned owls are our biggest resident owl. Barred owls are also large, but they have a different shape of their wings when they fly. The wings are rounded at the tip instead of pointed. They have dark eyes like our barn owls. When is a barn owl not a barn owl? When it's another species of owl in a barn. And great horned owls and screech owls will commonly roost in barns. So, you know, just because it's in a barn owl doesn't necessarily mean just because it's in a barn doesn't necessarily mean it's a barn owl. I mean, although, you know, I suppose you could call it a barn owl. So we're gonna do another quiz, but this one is not an audio quiz. This is a visual quiz. And I think we should go pretty fast, just to be like the most similar to what it's like when you see an owl in the wild. They don't, you know, a lot of times they fly away and that's it, and you gotta identify them. So I'm trying to launch the poll, so hopefully you guys can see it. And I'm gonna go to the first, and I'll give you 1 minute. So here's question 1. Maybe less than a minute. That seems like you got lots of time. All right, here's question 2. What type of owl is that? Okay, here's question 3. What owl is that? You know, I was saying question 3, but it's, yeah, it's question 3 for them. At the top, it says 6 through 10, so that's kind of confusing. But
Yeah, sorry, I grouped them in whatever number you sent them.
it makes sense. I'll just tell them what they see. So here's question 4.
And you guys thought I made the hard quizzes for Pints and Passerines.
Okay, and question 5. I think that's the last one we had on this one, right, Sam?
Yep, people are submitting their answers, and there are a bunch of people guessing on Facebook Live too.
Yay. I think quizzes are so fun. I hope everybody else is having fun. I don't know, I guess I'm just a big nerd, but I just really enjoy quizzes. Wow, you guys are good. Good job. And almost everybody is participating too. That's really cool. Okay, I'm going to show you guys the answers. All right, so I'll go back. Oh, I got to share the results. There you go. Okay, so question 1, this one here is a barn owl. Most of you got that right, good job. And when the when an owl is flying away, that is hard to tell, but you can see on this bird that beautiful golden kind of tawny colored upper parts, and you can see a little bit that it's got a short tail and pretty long legs. Here's our owl 2, which you guys did really great on this one. It's a great horned owl showing its pointy wings, the horizontal barring on the breast. So you guys did great on that one. Oh no. Okay, there's number 3, a barred owl. These guys have a similar shape in the wings to a barn owl, so I was trying to trick you on this, but you guys didn't fall for it. Good job. And then this one is indeed a barn owl. And then here's our, this is the trick question. So this is an owl that actually used to nest in Indiana, but it doesn't anymore. It's been extirpated as a nesting species. It's been over 20 years since we had short-eared owls nest in the state, but luckily they still come here for the winter. So they're, you know, we still have a lot of chances to see short-eared owls in Indiana in the winter. And I really recommend going out to look for them. They're really fun. They're active at dawn and dusk. And so you can get really nice photos like this one of a short-eared owl. And this owl is the same size as a barn owl, but you don't see the legs trailing out because the legs are shorter. And it's got these nice little tawny patches toward the end of the wing, and the rest of the top of the owl in flight is a darker brown than what we see on our barn owls. And of course it's got yellow eyes as well. So that's our short-eared owl. It's another state endangered species. Okay, these ones, I didn't want to go like totally crazy on the poll, but just think to yourself, what kind of owl is this? These cuties are barn owls, looking adorable, super fluffy, and this is in a church bell tower. Here's some barn owls, a little bit younger, not quite as cute, but you can see there's 4 birds here in the nest, and that's a good clue that you're looking at an owl nest in a barn. I mean, here's a owlet that was found in a barn, but you can see it's got streaks on the breast, and it has just the beginning of its little downy tufts on top of his head. This little guy is actually a screech owl. All right, so this is another trick question. What kind of owl is this? But you notice there's 2 of them, so that's a good clue. And they don't have the talons that you have in an owl or another raptor, like a hawk. Because these are actually turkey vultures. So turkey vultures will be in a lot of barn lofts and are really commonly mistaken for barn owlets. But the one thing, you know, if somebody says that there's 2, then that's kind of a clue that you might be dealing with turkey vultures. But they can make some really wild sounds. Some, you know, if they're scared by somebody that surprises them in their loft, they can make a hissing sound that is really similar to a barn owl sound. And so, you know, they sound scary and the barn is dark. So a lot of time people might think they're barn owls, but they're actually turkey vultures. And then here's a similar species. These are black vultures. And one way to tell black from turkey vultures, if you don't see the adults, is turkey vultures have a white down while black vultures have yellowish down. So there are other ways to identify owls. If you don't see the owl, you can still tell which owl has been roosting in your barn just by looking at what the pellets look like. So this is me in a barn loft picking up barn owl pellets. Very glamorous part of my job. Owls eat their prey whole or in big chunks. And when they swallow it, they're swallowing the bits that they can't digest. So they swallow the fur and the bones, and they later cough up these things in a pellet. So the pellet comes out the front end, and you can actually identify what bird it came from. And thankfully, barn owls have really distinctive pellets. and they last a really long time in a barn. So you can go in a barn that has the owls protected from the elements, from the rain, and you're going to be able to tell if there's been a barn owl spending any significant time in that barn in like the last year. So it's a really good way to monitor barns for owls. And you can learn a lot just by looking around at the floor with a flashlight. The barn owl pellets are really dark color, almost black. And you know, when they're fresh, they're shiny and black. But a really dark color. In our other resident owl species, the color is more gray. So color is a good way to identify which owl you have. Also, if you find other evidence like feathers, that's a really easy way to identify what owl has been hanging out there. Our Indiana Audubon Quarterly, which I love our publications with the Indiana Audubon Society, but the Indiana Audubon Quarterly is a really great reference. There is this article that was done a long time ago called the Owl Pellets of Indiana. And if you don't have a copy, I can share one with you, just so that you can read and appreciate the differences between those owl pellets. This picture on the right is actually a picture of a American kestrel roost. And kestrels leave pellets. They're tiny little pointy pellets that are filled up with little bits of beetles and grasshoppers and things. So just taking a look at what barn owls need to survive. They need grasslands and open agriculture. They eat voles primarily, meadow voles and prairie voles. And ideally it's a big area of open grassy area, like 200 acres or more. Barn owls need safe places to nest. So other than our nest boxes that we put in for them, they also use tree cavities and buildings near human habitation very frequently. There's a lot of threats to these little guys. They lose habitat in loss of barns, the loss of grassland. They get hit by cars. Great horned owls and raccoons are natural predators of them. But you can help barn owls. So if you put in a nest box for them in a place where raccoons can't reach them, that is a huge help to the barn owl. And the hole in that you cut for the box, if you keep that small, it's going to make it really hard for a great horned owl to get at them. So putting in a nest box for barn owls is a really great way to help them. You can do it on your farm, or if you don't have a farm, your family's farm or a neighbor or a friend, or you could just go totally hog wild and decide you're going to adopt a whole area and go knocking on doors. Have at it, because you know the more boxes that are installed, the more safe nesting places, and that really helps out the owls. Now, if you're not into construction and hanging out in barns, you can still help barn owls by supporting our nest box program through the state. And the best way to do that is by donating to the Non-Game Wildlife Fund. So we have had a nest box program in our endangered program, our endangered wildlife program, since 1983. And this is an example of a couple of boxes that are still active. You can see what it looks like inside and an idea of what it looks like outside. So although anyone can put up a box, and we offer instructions on installing the box and blueprints for building the box on our website, in these recent years, we really need to focus on high priority areas. So, you know, our program right now, we're not just putting in boxes anywhere that someone wants one. Instead, we are focusing on barns that have owls that don't have a nest box. And so, you know, we cover the whole state. It's a lot of work. Right now, we have about 350 nest boxes in the state. And so when we do these survey years, it's a lot to cover all of those boxes and maintain them, clean them out, and see what owls have been using them. When we did our last check, we had a worker that was really awesome, and she made this really nice map where we can look at and analyze where we need more boxes. And I really appreciate this map because and it might be a little hard to understand, but basically the bigger circles is where we have a lot of nest boxes, and a solid purple circle means we don't have any owls using those nest boxes. So after we did our 2017 survey, we looked at this map and it helped us really focus in on where we need more boxes. Like these counties, like Bartholomew County has one box and it has barn owls in it, so we wanted to get more boxes in there. Davies County, most of the boxes in Davies County had barn owls in them, so we knew we wanted to invest in putting more boxes up in Davies County, which we did after that. So you know, just trying to look at where the holes are and where we have more work to do. Here's a picture just to show you how big our nest boxes are. They're 32 inches long and 16 inches deep. So they're super big, but that's because there's plenty of room for a big family of barn owls. So the average number of barn owl nestlings is 5, but I have seen 8 in some nest boxes, and those boxes were full of owls. And so that's why we choose to put a bigger box out there. Some of the other boxes you might find online are a lot smaller, which is fine, you know, if you're able to maintain it, you know, clean it out every year. We only clean them out, you know, less often to get to all the sites. If you build the box, it's okay to use untreated plywood, but you don't want to use OSB plywood or chipboard because it'll fall apart really quickly. So we put these untreated boxes on the inside of a barn and expect that they will last 30 years or more, since they are in the barn and protected from the elements. We put the boxes up patching an entrance hole, so to speak. So we actually cut a hole in the wall of the barn. It's 5 inches by 5 inches square. And we install the nest box over that hole. So the owl flies in from the outside, kind of through the wall of the barn to get in there. And the reason why we do this is so that we can have nest boxes in barns that are otherwise sealed and inaccessible to birds. But the main reason is to keep out raccoons. So in the early days, we put boxes in and they were just hanging on the inside of a barn and they all had raccoons in them. And if you put a box in and there's raccoons in it, of course, it's not safe for barn owls because raccoons are a major predator. So we wanted to make sure that we can put these in a way that raccoons can't get to them. And especially in these metal barns, a raccoon's not going to get into that box. So this is a really good combination that works out really well for barn owls. There's this myth that barn owl nest boxes have to go in an old wooden barn, but that's not true at all. These metal pole barns are really easy for installing boxes, and they're super good at keeping out animals like raccoons. This is how we make the hole in a metal barn and keep raccoons out. But also we don't want to create sharp edges. So we basically cut an X over the hole and then fold back the 4 triangles so there aren't sharp edges for cutting the owls. And this is how you can do it if it's metal over wood, is you just bend those same triangles back in and then secure them to the wood siding. If you put a box in, it's important to make sure that you don't just cut like one whole board off of a barn, because you don't want to loosen the siding and damage the barn. So what we do is we span 2 boards, but then the problem is you have a gap there. So the solution there is to make the lower lip of the box perfectly even or a little higher than the wall of the barn. And that is just to keep the tarsus of the owl, the leg of the owl, from getting caught. You don't want to trap the owl. It's really important to make the boxes safe for owls. Here's another example. If you have really wide barn siding, you can take a piece of the siding out. And here's a picture again on a metal barn, just talking about not putting the hole right next to the roof, because this barn in particular had a tree over the top, and I could see that there's raccoon scat in the gutters. So I wanted to make sure that this box was put low enough that raccoon couldn't easily get into it. And then our nest box plans, if you look on our website, you'll see that the door that the owls use and the door that the people use to access and clean out the box are on the same side of the box. And that is to make sure that if the chicks, you know, if you open up the box and the chicks back away from you, that they won't push their siblings out of the box. So like in this picture, for example, you see all these baby Barnals and they're like, ah, a human is peeking their face into the box, right? So they back up to the other end of the box. And if we had an opening on that end, they could fall out. So that's why the owl's opening and the opening that the people use is on the same side of the box. But this is kind of a nice picture also, just to show that when you do install a nest box, you don't need to add any material to the floor of the nest box. As you can see, there's a really nice soft, fluffy material in this box, and that's actually pellets that have been coughed up by barn owls and then shredded and stepped on until you have like basically a beautiful soft carpet of vole fur. If you put a box in, you don't want to check it March through May because you don't want to disturb the owls. If they happen to be on eggs, you know, some females are really tolerant and will allow people to look in the box, or if they are flushed, they'll come back. But other females will flush and they won't come back. They'll be so freaked out by that face in their nest box that they won't return. So it's a lot better just to avoid checking during the time when they're most likely to have eggs, or you can listen for egg chicks to know if it's safe to look. And just a reminder to be ethical when viewing and photographing owls. You want to keep their best interest in mind. You want to do what is best for them. So, you know, flash photography is really harsh on the eyes of an owl. You can see these guys are squinting. They're pretty uncomfortable because of the flash photography. So I don't advise using flash photography on owls. You know how you feel when you get a camera flash in your face? I think it's a lot worse for owls because their eyes are so well adapted to seeing in the dark. And I've heard stories of an owl, you know, flash photography on an owl, and then it might crash into a tree because it just can't see well enough to fly. So it's just better not to use flash photography on owls. I don't advise flushing from roost or nest site or trespassing on private property. It's just important. We all love owls a lot, but if you are lucky enough to view owls, you want to minimize disturbance to them. If you know of a barn owl roost or nest, I would really like to know about it. It's confidential, and that information will go in our database, which helps us to track our current barn owl population. And then sites, you know, like where the owls are nesting, you know, on an area that's not quite as secure, like in this picture of these owlets. One of them actually fell out of this rafter nest and broke its leg and went to rehab. These types of sites can be improved with a nest box. So if we hear of a current nest site, we like to put a nest box in so they have another option. That might be a safer option where they can raise more babies successfully. So again, if you want to help us conserve Indiana wildlife, you can donate to the Non-Game Wildlife Fund when you do your taxes or at any other time. This presentation that I'm giving right now was funded by the Non-Game Wildlife Fund and then the matching tax grants, the matching grants that we get from the federal government. But if we don't have those initial donations from the Non-Game Wildlife Fund, we cannot get those matching grants, and then we don't have the funds to conserve wildlife. And this picture of the eagle is there because our eagle reintroduction was funded by the Non-Game Wildlife Fund. So that's one that a lot of people are familiar with, and that's just a reminder that all that money to bring eagles back to Indiana it did come from the same Non-Game Wildlife Fund now that is supporting our work with barn owls and other endangered species. So here's our website again, the Endangered Wildlife and there is my contact information if you want to get a hold of me. Thank you very much for coming to my virtual talk. I'm going to hang around for a while in case anyone has questions.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Amy. We appreciate your awesome talk and giving us your contact info. I know a few people did request the owl pellet thing, so maybe if you can email that to me, I can get it out to all the participants afterward.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank
good.
you.
And we do have some questions that I've been trying to keep tabs of. The first question was from Lucas on Facebook. He wanted to know what time of night barn owls were most active.
Yeah, so they're nocturnal and they don't come out until it's dark. So we won't see activity until like an hour after sunset. And then they can be active at any time in the night, but I've noticed they turn in usually pretty early too. So really going out, in the middle of the night is a good time to look for barn owls or listen for barn owls.
Cool. Awesome. Another question we have, Finn wants to know if barn owls are known to have predictable natural population cycles. Like the northern saw-whet owls seem to have a roughly 4-year cycle with peaks and lows.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if there are population cycles in areas where barn owls are more common. Other states have a lot more barn owls than we have in Indiana. I know Indiana best, and we really consistently have had low numbers of barn owls. Whenever we did our survey, we would find less than 20 nests in the entire state. And it's only this most recent survey that we had more than that. And I'm really curious, we actually have another survey coming up that will be looking at this year's nest results. And so, we had some pretty harsh weather here recently. And so I'm curious to see if our next survey result looking at 2021, if it will have good numbers of barn owls, or if I suspect that the weather might knock them back somewhat. So we'll continue to do these periodic surveys and see, how our owls do. Hopefully they will continue to do so well.
Awesome, thank you. The next question we have is from Julia. She says, given the current state of barn owl habitat and other relevant conservation issues in Indiana, how many barn owls do you think could be supported in the state? Is there a goal number of individuals?
That's a super good question. We don't have a goal that I'm aware of, but it's something that we've been thinking about a lot lately. You may have noticed we've had some other raptors recently that we've decided were recovered enough to come off of our list. Most recently, the bald eagle came off our list. It was listed as a species of conservation concern, but then just like 2 months ago, we took it off our list entirely because it's doing so well. We have an estimated 350 eagle nests in the state. Osprey is another one that we're looking at right now that might come off the list. It's still a species of special concern right now. So, once these raptors do start doing better, then it's very helpful to have some kind of a number in mind to consider when that species has recovered enough that we can say it's no longer state endangered. And we have an advisory committee, and they are actually thinking about that for barn owls right now, trying to decide, how many nests do we think is enough that we can say that this species is not endangered anymore. Endangered means that we are at risk of losing them in the state. And so, I think it's really important to look back and evaluate and try to come up with guidelines like that. So yeah, that is something that's in progress right now for barn owls.
Awesome, thank you. I think, was this Jim, was his name? He wants to know how you survey for barn owls. Did you mention that? These are from past, so.
Yeah, I was worried about running out of time.
That's
So
all
I really,
right. I kind of dug in the chat, so if they've already been answered, but yeah,
yeah.
he's wondering how you survey for them.
Yeah, so when I started for the state, it was being done a little differently. The surveys were being done during the nesting season. And I started 12 years ago for the state. So the first time I did a survey, it was during the nesting season, and that changed my mind. I decided I didn't want to survey for barn owls when they are vulnerable to disturbance during the nesting season, since they are endangered, and we didn't want to do anything to imperil any of those nests. So after that first year, we decided to go and look after the nesting season was over, and then see what we could learn by looking at the evidence that we find at the nest sites. So that's what we've done in the last 2 surveys, and I really like it, and that's how we're going to do this next survey. So basically what we do is, starting at the time when we're least likely to find active nests, which is fall and winter. I mean, of course, there still can be active nests during that time, because barn owls can nest at any time of the year. But most of the egg laying and chick rearing happens in spring, so March and April. So what we're doing now is, we go in fall and winter, we open up the nest boxes, or we check the sites that are not nest boxes. And we have a good look at the box. You know, does it need any maintenance? Sometimes there's holes that need to be patched, or latches that need to be fixed, or various things that need repaired. And then we clean out the box, because these guys, when they're in the box, they're coughing up pellets the whole time. And so the boxes can actually get full, basically to the top, with pellets. So they need to be cleaned out, and you can't clean those out when there's an active nest anyway. So so we go and we clean out those boxes, and we look at the evidence that we find. And based on that evidence, we can determine if it was an active nest or not in that previous year. So it's a little bit of an educated guess, but I'm very confident that we can do it very well, very accurately. And that's because of a couple of reasons. One is that pellet mass that's in the box, it accumulates, so you can do a rough guess of how many years it's been active since the last time you cleaned it out, just by looking at the quantity of pellets that have been coughed up in that nest box. Because you know, the whole family is in there coughing up pellets, you know, 2 to 3 a day. So that stuff adds up. Then the old pellets look different from a new pellet. So just the color of the pellets and the pellet mass in there, you can tell if it's fresh or if it's old. The old stuff, you know, is really light gray and it's dusty. You know, it's the moths have been through there. You know, so it's just, it looks different. And so you can guess, you know, how recent it is. And then another thing about barn owls is they do lay a lot of eggs, on average 5 eggs, but on average only 2 or 3 young actually fledge the nest. So if you have a box that has nesting barn owls, you're more than likely going to find carcasses of the nestlings that didn't make it. And you know, that sounds really grisly, but they have actually a really amazing capability of having so many young, and then if there is enough food for all the young, they can really capitalize on that opportunity and fledge so many more young than if they were more conservative and trying to have a small brood and making sure every single one survived. So, you know, looking for carcasses, looking for unhatched eggs, that also helps us to confirm if the nest is really active.
Awesome. Thank you.
We're barn owl detectives, I guess you could say.
Hey, sorry, that's not a bad job to have.
It's kind of messy at times, but yeah.
Another question that Finn had is, he's wondering if we have both light and dark morphs in Indiana.
No, we have, you know, owls that look different, like in this really wonderful picture by Marty Jones. You can see some are really dark and some are really light. And that's because males on average are whiter. They have less spots. They have more white in their facial disc. Females typically have more brown in their facial disc, especially above their eyes. they have more brown on their breast, and they have more spots, and the spots are bigger than males. But that being said, it can be really tricky to sex these owls. Sometimes there are some individuals that you just cannot easily tell if it's a male or a female. But for the most part, you have a wide variety of appearances just based on what sex the bird is, and then just individual genetics.
Awesome. Thank you. Julia wants to know, how do the owls find the nest boxes and know to go through that hole? I mean, you're just putting them up in barns, right?
Yeah, and I find this really awesome about barn owls, that they do find those boxes, and sometimes they find them really fast. And I think that's so cool that you can put something out that's meant for a species and then they find it. I mean, it just blows my mind, but it makes sense because this is a species that's looking for exactly this thing. And there's not a lot of cavities out there on the landscape. It's in scarce supply. So they're cruising around looking for a little hole, a place to hide, and their instinct tells them to look for a place like that. So when they see this exact thing that they're looking for, it's exactly the right size, they're just drawn to it like a magnet. And it's really, really cool how well it works. But we've had really good results putting these nest boxes in. And so have other people, other people that have put the boxes in. Our surrounding states have nest box programs. Kentucky has had a lot of success. Illinois has had a lot of success. So yeah, it's a tried and true method for getting barn owls to nest in a safe place, is to put these boxes in.
So you don't have like the special magic barn owl glitter or something for your boxes.
No, they just are drawn to it, and it works really well. It's cool.
That's incredible.
But we can call it magic if that's more satisfying.
All right, we have a few more questions. Finn is saying that it seems like every year they get reports of barn owls in Amish communities in the northern part of the state, and that their farms may offer good habitat. Has there been any effort at outreach to them to place nest boxes?
Yeah, so last year we put some boxes up in LaGrange County, and that was in response to, there was a nesting site up there. So what we did is we went to the site that had a nest. We put up a nest box there because the owls were nesting in a spot that worked out okay. They had one fledgling. They can do better than that. That's a little below average. So we put a nest box in on that farm, and we put 2 more nest boxes in the area, in the neighborhood, because we know that there was habitat there that was good for the owls. And so that was our, we're up there putting 1 in already. We might as well put a couple more in, right? But we could actually use help. We've installed a lot of boxes in Daviess County, so we've got that area pretty well covered. But some of those areas up north, if we had someone who was really into barn owls, who wanted to be a champion for barn owls, I think that would be really helpful, to have a person or a group of people, that built boxes and did that outreach with the community and went and installed some boxes. I think that would be super great, because, we don't all have to work alone, right? We can work together. We can all have, the same mission, and we'll get better results if we all pitch in and do some barn owl installations. We can barn owl nest box installations. We get even more barn owls. So if anybody is interested in something like that and they're looking for some guidance, or they just want to talk about it, feel free to give me a call or an email. I would love to talk about that.
Definitely get a team up there, up north, the barn owl team.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
All right, next question is, where did barn owls nest before there were barns?
Yeah, good question. So barn owls have been living around people for a really long time, but before they were barns, there was actually a lot more cavity trees. And that's one thing that people have really changed on the landscape is, converted the habitat, the natural habitat, so now we have a real human modified landscape, and we have fewer natural nest sites like large dead trees or cavity trees, things like maples and sycamores that have a nice cavity. There are just less of those trees out there, and the ones that are in really high demand. There's a lot of competition from mammals and a lot of other cavity nesting birds. So this is just a real easy way we can help out barn owls, is by putting in these cavities that are meant especially for them, and it works really well.
Awesome. Thank you. I think someone on Facebook, I don't know if they're still on, wanted to know if you knew where the box was in Allen County, but I suppose you're not allowed to say exactly. Somewhere in the barn, right?
Yeah. So, those dots on the map, and I can go back to that slide, those are not like the exact location. That's just one dot in the center of the county. And that's a really special case, I think. It's going to take me a while to get there. There we go. Because it is so far north, but it's really, we've had other nesting activity up north. Like last year, we had a successful nest in Lake County, which is pretty awesome. And it's not even the first Lake County barn owl nest that we've had. So, they're a lot more common in the southern part of the state. They're more common, like south of I-70. That's where we expect to find barn owls, but it's not totally unheard of to have them up north. And I think in those cases, those are really great spots, especially for nest boxes, because if those owls are there as a year-round resident, it's really hard on them to get through the winter. This is not a species that does well in the cold and the snow, but if we give them a nest box, they have a place where they can get out of the elements, get out of the wind. It's a little more secure. They can hide in there and less likely to be disturbed by people, during the day, so they don't have to waste the resources of those energy resources of flying away and finding another hiding spot. So I really think, people that live in the north that are interested, that want to build a box, even though there aren't that many barn owls up there, it's still worth doing if you're inspired by that. And there are other species that use the nesting boxes, like our American Kestrels, which is another native species that needs cavities for nesting, and they are in decline. American Kestrels use the boxes a lot. So I encourage people, if you are interested, try putting up a box, see what happens. You never know, could get a barn owl.
All right, lots of questions. So do you have time, Amy?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Finn wants to know, what do we know about the historical population in the state? Are they declining, or have numbers always been low?
Numbers were low when our program started tracking them in the 80s. If you look at some of the historical records of birds in Indiana, you got Butler, which is like 1897, and Mumford and Keller is a really good one, and they say declining. So I think it's pretty fair to assume, like, when Indiana was first settled by Europeans, we probably had a fair number of barn owls back then, because you had a lot of agriculture. You had a lot of small farms with barns, and you had a lot of grass. Everybody had livestock back then. So it makes sense that historically, before, pre-settlement, we probably didn't have very many barn owls. After European settlement, we probably had pretty good numbers, and then a decline for a long time after that, up until just recently, which I don't totally understand it, of course, but we'll keep surveying, and we'll keep seeing what happens, and then maybe one day we'll figure it out. But I suspect these mild winters that we've had recently and our nest box program are probably big reasons why we have pretty good numbers of barn owls right now, compared to more recent years where we had 20 nests or less.
Wow. Margaret wants to know, what classifies a bird as endangered versus special concern?
Endangered is like species that are really at the brink of being lost. So if a species, a bird, or there's a lot of other species on our list, um, and those are actually all on our website, that endangered wildlife. I don't know, when I screen share, do you guys see also can you see the website here too? Probably can, right?
Yes. What?
Yeah, so yeah, this is our website, and we actually have a list right here, view the endangered species list. So you can click on this and see all the species that are state endangered and special concern. Mammals, the fish and other aquatics like mussels, and the reptiles and amphibians and the birds. So if you're curious to see exactly what's on our list, that's right there on the website. And actually right at the top, very conveniently, there's a definition of state endangered and state special concern. So state endangered, it's saying that its prospects for survival and recruitment within the state are in immediate jeopardy, and it's in danger of disappearing from the state. And then state special concern is a species that requires monitoring because we suspect that it's in trouble, or there's been some recent change in legal status or required habitat. So it's really similar to, like, the federal lists, which have endangered and threatened, except that on our state list, we don't have a state threatened. We have a state special concern, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Kristen wants to know if you'll talk a little bit about how you sex the owls, like the banding and the sexing process.
Yeah, it's kind of an educated guess, right? You can look at the pattern on the breast, like I was mentioning before, how white it is, how much spotting there is, and then how large the spots are. So that's a clue. And then I also like looking at the facial shield. So some owls have a lot of brown in the face, and it's pretty obvious, that that's a female. A lot of brown above the eyes. And then some have totally white facial shields, which would probably be a male. But I still think, there's really a lot of overlap, and it's tricky to sex a barn owl. So you can't always do it, but you can make a good guess.
Awesome. I think it's Jim again that wants to know what type of grassland that the barn owls prefer. Is it like a pasture? Is it maybe big blue stem? Are there certain kinds of grasses that they prefer over others?
I think it's helpful to have a diversity. So if there's a little bit of everything, that kind of covers it. You've got, not just like a complete monoculture of big blue stem, because I think that can be kind of impenetrable, hard for an owl to get down to the ground and grab the vole. I don't know if you ever go out on our state fish and wildlife areas and go into some of the grasslands, like in areas of Goose Pond Fish and Wildlife area, or like Reynolds Creek, game bird habitat area up north. The properties, they don't just, put them in grass and then don't do anything, but there's actually active management out there, and they do that managing for wildlife. So, you'll see things like there'll be, strip disc areas, they'll be burning those areas periodically. Sometimes they will go in and plant sunflowers or something like that. So, sometimes they'll mow portions, so there's a lot of different management going on. And I think that kind of thing that you see at our fish and wildlife areas is a really good example of good habitat for grassland species like barn owls. So it's not just like a huge field that everything is the same, but there's like a little bit of everything there. But I also, when we do our surveys, we do find areas with nesting barn owls and successfully nesting barn owls that are predominantly agriculture. And I really like to think about that and try to figure out how the owls are able to make it there. And just trying to understand it. And I think that it's really helpful for them when there's these private agricultural fields that, again, are not just a monoculture of corn or soybeans all the way up to the edge of the road. But what I've noticed in areas that have barn owls is there's perhaps a little bit of wider edge at the edge of the field. You know, there's more grass in that area. So there's a little bit of habitat there. Where there's drainages, you know, a lot of agricultural fields that aren't in areas that are totally flat, they'll have like a grassy drainage area. And I suspect that the owls will hunt there and find voles to eat there. And then, of course, you know, once the crops are off of the field, there's habitat in the field. Once there's a cover crop put out in the agricultural field, they're going to be hunting in there and catching voles. So, you know, those kind of habitats seem like they can support barn owls too. And if you want to get an idea of like where you might find barn owls, it's really hard to observe barn owls since they're nocturnal, but you can watch other grassland species that are hunting, like northern harriers. So when I see a northern harrier, which is a type of hawk that is active during the day and it hunts in grassland areas for a lot of the same prey items that barn owls hunt for, that helps me to understand how a barn owl might hunt those same fields at night.
Awesome. Well, Amy, I think that's all the questions that I had in the chat and on the Facebook. I think I'm going to turn off your screen share. But if anyone else has any last minute questions, feel free to ask them. Otherwise, Amy, just want to thank you again so much for doing this and taking the time out of your evening to give us this awesome presentation on barn owls in Indiana. And we appreciate everything that you and the DNR are doing. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It was a really great opportunity to talk to people virtually.
Yeah, didn't even have to leave your house.
I know, that's so convenient.
And for those of you that got on late or are on Facebook, this meeting is recorded. It'll be available on our Facebook page as well as on our YouTube channel within a few days. And don't miss. Wow, I can't talk anymore. Don't miss the next Pints and Passerines, which is next Wednesday, special edition with the Indiana Dunes Birding Festival. We'll be revealing the fine art print for that. And there is lots of trivia and games for that one. So if you're into trivia and games, make sure next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it and have a great night.
Cool.